On this episode of Star Trek Universe, I'll be talking about the very first Star Trek episode, The Cage, with Effie Ophelders, right after these words from our mystery sponsors. Welcome into Star Trek Universe, the podcast that originated as two lifelong friends talking about Star Trek as they have since they were 6. It will remain that, but now on the cusp of the 200th episode, we are expanding. I am David C. Roberson, and this, a new host to Star Trek Universe, Effie Ophelders.
Good morning or night to you, and I'm very happy to be here as someone who is thoroughly unqualified to be a host on a Star Trek podcast. But we're slowly changing that. Hopefully.
Well, I've been wanting an excuse to go back and watch all of Star Trek from the beginning and cover it here on the show. And Matt has never had the time to do that. He has musical gigs and family stuff and about 87 other podcasts he's part of on the Stranded Panda Network. And the other night we were talking, and we were looking for an excuse to talk more often. And my gears started slowly turning because you had just watched The Cage a few weeks ago and lamented that you wish you had a podcast to listen to about it. And I suggested we do this, and you said the same thing crossed your mind.
Yeah, I'd already also, thinking of podcasts to do together. I was definitely, you've been trying to get me to watch this. I've been trying to make time for it. I know I won't end up watching all of it unless there's some sort of, something forcing me to keep at it. And it's way more fun to discuss it. So, I'm excited.
Yeah, I am very excited about this. You have a keen narrative intellect.
Why, thank you. I'll take that.
You analyze stuff. I see posts. I read your Letterboxd reviews, and I'm like, Jesus. She is.
That's what I'm going for.
So much smarter than me.
Oh no, I'm just going for the that's a lot of text at first. That's what I'm aiming for in my Letterboxd reviews. They've been shorter recently. It depends on the movie. Yeah.
Yeah. My Letterboxd reviews, if I bother with one, is pretty good.
Fair enough. No, I'm just I need to get all my thoughts onto this electronic paper, and I reflect a lot, but I also force myself to write a review about everything I watch on there. So
yeah,
I'm apparently just obsessive with stuff. I need to have an outlet for everything. I think because it's a lot.
Yeah, I hear you,
and that's why we end up making a podcast. I guess. I
don't know.
Why are we doing this?
I don't know. I was really excited about it. Because we decided to do this, and I was really, really excited about it. And I came home and I told my wife, I'm starting a new podcast with Effie. And she went, "Oh, I'm sorry." Because she knows me enough to know that I'm going to be really excited for a day. And then for the rest of the time leading up to the podcast, I will be hating that I ever even had the idea. I will be beside myself with anxiety. I will be
oh, darling,
terribly put upon. And then I'll do the show and I'll have a great time. And I'll be like, that was fun. We should do this again. And
we better.
And I'll be excited for half the week. And then as the next episode encroaches, I slowly start withdrawing into myself again, like a slug that's been salted. And that's who I am. And by the time I'm putting together prep, I'm just a nervous. It's the same way with Matt and Jason on DC on Screen. It's it has nothing to do with you.
Well, at least we know it doesn't get better after hundreds of episodes.
No.
Now I feel sorry, but
no. No. I have a deep, terrible anxiety, but I know I enjoy it. So
that's good. And at some point, you're just gonna have constant anxiety because of the amount of podcasts in a week schedule, and it's just going to be nervous wreck after nervous wreck because the prep for the one show merges into the other one.
Yeah.
Well,
luckily there's not
that's the state of your life.
Luckily there's not a ton of prep for the new episodes because they don't have. There's no trivia for them. No one's really put anything together. There's no research. It's just
take some years. Yeah,
we just sit down and talk about it, and we might have a couple of emails. So that's nice.
Oh.
But by the time
sounds pretty quiet, yeah.
by the time you and me
Yeah.
get to new Star Trek, there's going to be like, I don't know.
Years of speculation and behind the scenes nonsense, and
Yeah, which I'm ignoring mostly.
We
in
have
this,
the time.
So.
Oh.
Well, I took one look at Memory
Thank
Alpha
goodness.
for the Cage, and I'm like, I don't care about the third draft of the pilot script. I don't care. Like, I'm not talking about,
Yeah, like it's we're not reading 3 drafts that may or may not have been public, and like, no, we saw an episode. Let's stick to that.
Right. So yeah, you and I are going to be going through the original series to start with, reviewing each episode in production order, primarily to experience, I feel, the evolution of ideas within the series. Because
I'm very curious to get going on that trajectory, because I have no idea where it leads.
Yeah, you've never sine it up until now.
Yeah,
You've seen what?
I have zero clue.
A couple of Abrams movies. Is that right?
Yeah, I've seen the Chris Pine, the Calvin Timeline, like 2 of them. I didn't even see Beyond, and then I've recently seen The Cage, and that's literally everything, like all of my exposure, except for like cultural osmosis, where I just I know Kirk and Spock are like exist, and like there's things you just know, but there's tons I don't.
I do love that, though you are inexperienced.
Yeah.
You still like glom onto enough to be like the Kelvin timeline. Like, why would you know the Kelvin timeline?
I don't know why I know that, but I do, because people talk about it. It's yeah. Like I apparently hear about what's which canon and how but no, that's the stuff that gets me interested, I guess. No, I've just. Like, yeah, my most exposure to William Shatner. Isn't that the Michael Myers face?
Yes.
The mask?
Yes.
Exactly. Yeah, that's the most exposure I've had to William Shatner up to this point.
All right. So, yes, Matt and I are going to continue our news and feedback and reviews of current episodes. We are, of course, resuming our duties covering Strange New Worlds when it returns, June 15th. But with all that said, Effie, is there anything else you'd like to tell us about yourself before we get into this this viewing of The Cage?
Oh gosh, yeah, I have very little to tell about myself. I'm what am I? I'm still 26 for the time being. I use she/her pronouns. You probably figured that out along the way already. And I'm excited to see what is up with the Trekkies. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and you're from Netherlands. If anyone,
I am from the Netherlands. Yeah, that's true. I'm not a native speaker. If I say weird stuff, it's probably because I'm weird.
Yeah, I know some people will just be like sitting and going like, "Where are they from? Where are they from?" It'll be like just looping in their head. They won't be able to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, people just instinctually, well, not really instinctually, but can probably guess that me and Matt are from the South in the United States.
Fair enough.
But we also joke about Alabama like every 5 minutes, so I'm pretty
that
sure.
helps a lot. Yeah, that keeps it fresh in my memory too.
Yeah.
And I tease you a lot about Alabama, so that helps too. It's
Yeah.
a two-way street. It's hard not to bring it up.
Yeah.
It's mostly sympathy though.
I mean, I try to tease you being in the Netherlands, but I'm like, "What's up, gunless?" And that doesn't really work.
Yeah, it's not as big a diss as people think.
Like,
It's
look at
pretty
you
calm,
with your
really.
free health care.
Oh, it's not actually free anymore. We're screwing it up thanks to y'all's influence over here.
Our influence.
Yeah.
We're influencing you. That's so sad.
In mostly through media, but neoliberal capitalism is everywhere. It's the right wing is growing steadily everywhere.
Yeah.
It's a sad state of affairs.
There is something fun about the idea that your politicians are watching.
It is a lot more free than it is over there, though. Just to be clear, I pay a lot less than you would.
Well, yeah. I do like the idea of your politicians like watching things like John Wick and going, "That's what we need."
It's not the first thought that popped into my head watching John Wick, but I imagine some of them do. Yeah, it's especially on the more extreme side of the spectrum, there are some figures who are definitely importing some conspiracy theories y'all came up with that I then
Yeah.
recognize as, oh, you did that in the U.S. like 5 years ago. Um,
Uh-huh.
it's now it's catching on here. That's usually how it goes.
Okay, well, we're going to talk about the cage. Let's get this
Yes.
memory alpha summary because it's really short. While investigating a distress call from Talos 4, Captain Christopher Pike of the Starship Enterprise is captured and tested by beings who can project powerfully realistic illusions. And this was the original pilot of Star Trek. So,
Short and sweet indeed. Yeah, I think I just hit play on Netflix and told you after, like, I finally started watching a Trek episode, and I didn't, like, not until I started, I didn't realize that, oh, this is a different captain, never mind, this is definitely the pilot.
yeah.
So at least I did it right in terms of production order. I didn't know that in advance, but I got started there.
Well, since you
Netflix definitely saves me a lot of looking things up, I guess.
Yeah. Well, since you saw the Abrams movies, I don't know if you recognize the name Christopher Pike, but that was the captain who recruited Kirk in the Abrams movies.
Right. I vaguely remember that, but also it's been years since I saw those two movies. I at that point I was just like, oh, Cumberbatch is playing a famous villain. Sure, let's see what that villain is about. Might as well watch the first one first. And yeah, I don't remember much besides he's not Khan. Yeah, he's definitely Khan. That's all I absorbed about that.
It was a damn shame.
And then he ended up being Khan, so sure.
Also, I know that they were like really worried about like not giving it away that it was Khan, but oh my god, it should have been Nestor Carbonell. He looks just like Ricardo Montalban, and he's such a fantastic actor. And he's friends with J.J. Abrams. He's been on J.J. Abrams stuff. I just don't understand how they get to Cumberbatch, but whatever, man.
Sometimes they don't go with the obvious choice. They just go with the hot name at the moment, I guess.
Yeah, I guess so. So yeah, like, how does this find you in terms of, like, as just, like, a good sci-fi show? Like, do you think this is good?
Yeah, that's my main takeaway, where I'm like, oh, this is just very fun. It's... and it does have the like sci-fi of the era. It breathes that sort of that vibe where you're just there's the exploration, there's a sense of excitement, and at the same time there's that layer of oh, let's talk about what humanity is, what makes us human, what is what ethical dilemmas, moral questions, and it's I'm looking forward to that because it sets the tone for, oh, it's going to be that every episode is just going to have an hour of like a good story, and I like that that format as well, because there is so much just old sci-fi I have zero exposure to, but there's something to that era where they were just very into it, and like lots of like big names in that scene were around that I will probably never end up reading a book by, but I might see some episodes where I'm like, oh, these are fun ideas. I enjoy this.
Yeah. You're going to see Richard Matheson, I Am Legend.
I have still no clue who it is.
Oh, I Am Legend?
I will.
I Am Legend.
Oh, I Am Legend. Yeah. I've heard of that. I haven't seen the movie though, but
I'm talking about the book, but yeah, sure.
Sure.
Talk about the movie.
But I know the name solely because of the movie they made. That's the level of knowledge I have, okay?
Yeah, I got you.
I'm young, damn it.
I know. That was part of the appeal, other than we've been friends for like 7 years, and I just genuinely want your take on these episodes.
Yeah. I was also at the first time watching, I rewatched this morning, but I was pleasantly surprised at the horniness. I was like, oh, this is sure for the time, that's okay. But I can enjoy a good type of that sort of thinly veiled sex appeal, where there is, it's daring for the time, but it's not overblown by now. So it's that sort of still teasy type. Oh, this is all kind of wrong vibe, and I enjoy that. It's pleasant. It's just fun. Yeah. So I had a good time overall, and I do like the way that you just slowly sort of figure it out, that there's just the setup. You go into a new area, you get the new species, you don't know exactly what they're about, what are their limitations,
Right.
what are their goals. And it's just well written. There's just a lot of dialogue where you get exposition by just the virtue of the fact that the Telosians are talking over him, just continuing their line of conversation while he's trying to figure something else out and saying something else. So you get like two sides of exposition of the situation at once, and it's just clever. I like it. It had a good pace as well. There is a bunch of just, oh, look at us, we figured out how to make lasers work on TV, but that's fine, you know, like practical effects of the time and like the costumes and everything, the prosthetics, it's just well made. It's fun. There's a budget there, and but most of all, there's a script, and that's what I appreciate most.
Yeah.
Because otherwise the rest kind of falls apart, as we've seen in other Star-related franchises.
No, I don't know. I don't watch Star Wars very much.
Oh, so. I'm way behind on all the Disney Plus stuff, but like mainly the sequel movies that had zero plan. That's what I'm referring to. I enjoyed some other stuff.
I liked The Last Jedi, and that's the last one I saw. I really liked it.
Yeah, it was good.
I thought it was the best one.
Completely undercut it again in the next one. So,
and I heard that happen.
That's sort of where I'm like, why, you guys? Yeah, they're kind of messy. But I've only seen that franchise first, just by virtue of the fact that it's way easier to get into because there's only a couple of movies at that time. There were like 6. So
yeah,
I was like, I can watch 6 movies. If it's like, well, there's 300 hours of television, I'm like, I don't know where to begin.
Yeah.
But here I am.
What's fun is by the time, you get to Star Trek the Motion Picture, when you see those effects, you're going, and like the way the ship looks and everything, you're going to be like, oh, Star Wars totally got them, like you could see the inspiration from Star Wars.
Oh, I can already see that, where there's, like, in the cage, where there's the other creatures, just the suits, the masks, the relatively simple prosthetics of let's just misshape a head, and those types of things are very clearly inspirations where I'm like, yeah, this came first. Of course, George Lucas was looking at this shit.
Mm-hmm.
So it's already fairly obvious to me that of course, there's an influence. It has to be influential, and it has similarities where I'm very clearly like, yeah, this is what we tend to do with portraying different alien species, and and just a vibe.
Well, part of what I love,
it's a different focus, but because this is more explorative. But
part of what I love to bring up with the Star Wars versus Star Trek people is like, you can clearly tell the influences. Like, George Lucas was watching. He said he watched those Star Trek. You can,
like,
and then
on age alone, like if he's gonna make a sci-fi movie called Star Wars, he's that age. He's watched Star Trek. There's no world in which he wouldn't have.
Yeah, and then you
don't even have to ask the man.
But without Star Wars success, we wouldn't have gotten a Star Trek movie. So the franchise wouldn't have continued. Like, it's important. All of the influences, all of the things.
Yeah, and that's why rivalries are such nonsense. Like, even if there's 3 bad Marvel movies in a row, I'm still glad they're continuing, so I can get 3 bad DC movies, I guess. Oh God, no, it's not that rough. There's enough good ones to keep me going, thankfully.
No. So one of the things I really like about this episode is we don't start off at the beginning of their journey. This is roughly 2 or 3 weeks after some terrible incident on Rigel 7, where if we're to believe the illusion that they revisited on Talos 4, they fought one of the people who stormed the Capitol on January 6th, and I swear to God, someone was dressed like that character. Someone was dressed like that monster. I saw.
Yeah, that's the QAnon shaman. Pretty much that headdress. Yeah, I see the resemblance.
But yeah, Pike is really dealing with the fact that he doesn't want to keep being a captain. He lost so many people at Rigel 7. You know, Spock is literally limping. Another crewman has a brace on. Something people were injured, and Pike.
And that responsibility bears a weight on his shoulders, and it makes sense for him to start off being very ready to resign and do something else with his life, because it's not always fun to be in charge of all those lives, and it sets a tone. Yeah,
I really like the idea that, like, I loved all of the stuff with the Doctor. The Doctor who's like, oh, I'm going to be a bartender. Yeah. I'm a bartender now.
He's great.
People will tell their bartender shit.
Things.
You know, they never tell their doctor. And then the wrap up where he's like, well, you're starting to sound like a doctor again. And he's like, yep, we both have the same types of customers. You know, like, oh my God.
Living and the dying, yeah.
Yeah, the living and the dying. That was such a well-written scene.
Yeah, just if you can give me a good conversation that keeps me just engrossed in the material, then you've written a good scene. It's sometimes you don't need more than just two people talking, and if you can't pull that off, then I'm not going to be as invested when there's just a bunch of light effects. So I was very happy to see that relationship, and I also enjoyed the the line at the end where it's like all ship doctors are dirty old men.
Yes,
which is, you know,
the Adam and
very
Eve.
Very relatable if you've ever met a doctor. Yeah,
which I don't know. Like, one of I think it's funny that you brought up how this show was kind of horny, because, like, to me this is downright sterile compared to what the original series becomes.
I'm looking forward to that.
Once we get into, like, mini skirts and, like, foil bikinis and, like, literal space
and
prostitution.
Here I am being like, oh, she's painted green in some sort of dress and dancing. That's not enough. Good to know where we're headed.
Yeah, it gets a little horny, for real. Like,
yeah, sure. Yeah, I mean, I've heard some teen boys were into it. They're like, yeah.
And 39-year-olds.
At this point, you were a teen boy once.
I was. Yeah.
Let's not dwell on that past.
Yeah. Let's not.
But I love a lot of little touches, like the plants humming in the wind, just that sense of, like, oh, this is unknown to all of them, but also there's something like this indeed every week where, like, oh, it's a couple of weeks since we were on that planet and stuff went down, and it's that gives it that sense of voyage, but also immediately sets up the expectation for a continuation where there's gonna be stuff happening all of the time, and we're just seeing snippets.
Yeah. Were you so you like the noise that the little blue plants made, huh?
It's just stuff like that where I'm like, oh, this is a fun, nice touch. It doesn't end up being all that important, but it's just
except it kind of
cute
does.
to have in there.
Because they reuse that sound for the transporters for the rest of the series.
Okay.
It's
just
included.
We have this sound effect.
Yep.
Oh, that's good to know. I'll pay attention to that.
Yeah, just pay attention to that. Like, I don't. It's just
it's the flowers.
Yeah, it's fun.
See, this is why I need your trivia.
What did you think about the Telosians eventually deciding that we were too what am I looking for?
Yeah, too violent and dangerous and primitive.
Primitive. That was it.
Yeah, primitive is a key word in this one.
Yeah.
There's a lot of the primitive emotions of hate that are so important, and it's also strangely absent are the primitive emotions of things like lust, because apparently that's what they're looking for. But
yeah,
there's really that focus about, oh no, we're more evolved, but also we can't fix our own stuff.
Yeah,
apparently, so we need y'all to do it, and
like,
but yeah, it centers
primitive.
around that sort of.
We must jerk off while feeling your emotions.
Pretty much,
jackasses.
It's very much that patronizing about, oh, I'm gonna predict your next move, and then watch him do exactly that. Where it's just, Yeah, you can read minds, no shit. Like, of
Well,
course you're
knowing
gonna be able to know what we're doing.
Roddenberry, he would not have seen lust as a primitive emotion. He would not have seen that as
Mm.
primitive. Like that's human nature. We got to do that. Like he was like a total swinger.
Right, primitive purely in the sense of like unevolved, like that
Hatred.
violent nature. Yeah, okay, sure.
Yeah.
That makes sense in the framework. Yeah, because other yeah the lust is also continually framed in very much it's still very normative in terms of monogamy, where it's just like no, we expect you need a husband and wife thing. It's
Mm-hmm.
there's you need to start first to feel protective of the girl, because otherwise you won't care for her, and then
Yeah.
oh, sympathy, very good. And there's just sort of that progression where it's like okay, it's still an interesting age gap, but we're in a different decade. um I mean, we're decades ahead supposedly, but that in some ways society has not yet evolved.
Yeah. No. I I kind of like the idea that like they were just like kind of probing around in his mind and just being like, you know what, we're gonna give you this like idyllic. Here's your husband wife scenario at home. At home,
Yeah, perfectly
in
set up
a
by
park.
that conversation before, because the two horses and you missed that place. Let's
Yeah.
give you that.
Did you notice
And
they
then
were?
he gets it, and he's not happy with it.
Did
Yeah.
you notice that they were in the Mojave Desert?
Should I have noticed that from?
He brought it
Like,
up.
how do I?
He said, "We're back home in or this is where I grew up,
Oh, right.
Mojave." And she's like, "Do you know back centuries ago this used to be all sand?"
Oh, right. Yes. Oh, that's true. That's a nice touch of just. We'll eventually figure out a way to not keep that land useless and dry, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um.
Yeah.
What
It's
was
a
I
nice
gonna
optimistic futurism. Yeah.
say? Well, that's Star Trek. But
Exactly. Like, and that's very comforting to an extent.
I love that, like, when he doesn't, like, acquiesce to that, they're like, oh, maybe you want this other thing you like, where you are, like, this, like...
The secret desires you keep
Yeah.
buried. Yeah.
And that was something that Boyce had mentioned while they were having martinis, when he was like, what are you going to do? Like, go hang out with Orion traders and, deal with animal women, green
Yeah.
animal women? And that was another, like... And I love like the creepy, lecherous pieces of shit who were basically like the devils on his shoulder.
Yeah, that suddenly come out of nowhere, and that are still very much illusions, but are just like, oh, they actually like it when you take advantage of them. And
Yeah.
it's like, okay, that's
Yeah.
messed up, but sure.
And then the
okay.
one guy's like, wouldn't you say it's worth a man's soul? Like, oh.
Like you're just admitting full on that it's very wrong, apparently.
Yeah.
But okay. But that is of course the struggle on the inside for him, where he's not entirely sure if, like, of course there's a part of him that wants to just bang, and it's very much that tension with the better side, or the high-mindedness of, but everyone would be captive and my children would live in torture, or in fear of torture at least. So
Yeah.
it's very Matrixy in that regard, where it's that choice ultimately of the illusion or reality, and that apparently our history proves that we're very good at choosing death over benevolent captivity, whatever that may mean. And of course you need a character to choose the illusion at the end too, or not at the end in case of Matrix, but still.
Yeah.
It's an interesting theme. It's nicely explored, and there is of course some the fact that she's not just old but also deformed because they don't know how to put a human back together. There's her choosing beauty and illusion over that sort of reality and freedom, because everything is framed to make that make sense, to say, of course she's making the right choice because even Pike agrees with her reasons. Then it's like, okay, so it's normal to prefer being beautiful than free or yourself, or there is some in that conclusion there is a naturalization of what is right and what is apparently like too different or too deformed to even come with them and live back in the current society of the future. So there's some ways in which it's apparently still understandable to not want to live as a deformed person in that utopian society.
Yeah, I mean, of course, this was they crashed 18 years ago. She has no idea what society even is. She had never met an actual man.
Yeah.
She was the only survivor of that crashed ship.
Yeah, she just feels bad. But also, if you've been living there for 18 years, how do they even know what humans look like until they land? So is she suddenly has she only been dealing for a day with that problem of I don't look like regular humans?
Well, I mean, I
assumed
they had like some sort of ship's logs or whatever, but
yeah, they got something from this and also from the Enterprise's database, of course.
Yeah,
they were leeching information.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but if I think she had said like they knew what she had always envisioned as the perfect man. But the other thing is like when they show him what she looks like, it doesn't just look like it's a beauty situation. It looks like she is in pain. It looks like she is like very, very like she is like hobbled by this, like physically and like like I think the illusion takes away the pain.
Right. That would be that would be ideal. Yeah.
And as a person with a screwed up back,
I'm not
I
sure
would.
If she's in pain. Yeah, no, I get that.
I would live in pleasant
I hadn't
captivity.
considered that she might be. Yeah.
It's like if you take away my back pain, I'll totally like sit here. And
I'll sit in here, like
I'll watch Buffy the Vampire Slayer reruns while you watch me sob and feel my emotions because you have no way of doing that for your own society. You weird bulb-shaped headed creatures.
It is very, very layered in that sense. It keeps progressing because it gets to the point of like, oh, we're doomed to go extinct now because you were the only type of species that could have been adaptable enough to deal with our agriculture and get stuff up and running again or something. So there is that sort of sad conclusion, but at the same time, it starts off with a very no, I'm not real, and then she is real, and then it progresses nicely through those. Oh no, they're just here for the emotions, but also they want us to have kids. So it's just it builds on each other very nicely.
Yeah. So yeah, I really I don't think there are right answers necessarily because like by the end of it, I feel like the Telosians are sympathetic villains.
Yeah,
like, they're not like they're just they're a little neurodivergent. They don't know how to socialize. They don't know how to be like, hey, do you want to live in paradise? They're just like, capture them and bring them into the cage.
I wouldn't characterize neurodivergent people as necessarily that type of, but yeah, there is that sort of, there's no nice community.
I consider myself and most of my closest friends neurodivergent, and we don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm one of them. I know.
Yeah, I don't know how to talk to people. I don't know how to people like I was in Ollie's this discount store. They like get like overruns of books and stuff, and their graphic novels are like $3. And
neat.
I walk in and there's like oh, it's awesome. But I walked in and there was someone over in the comics, and they just had like stacks of comics, and I was like, I want to be friends, but I don't know how. So I just stood there. Yeah, I stood there quietly in the corner and waited for them to walk away, and then I just like nodded at them, and
that's the start.
And then like in a different section, I found they had one more copy of the annotated Sandman hardback edition. I already have it. It's $12.99, taken down from $50.
Yeah, I was about to say the hardcover is expensive for that book. Jesus.
And I ran into the person again before I left, and I was like, "Oh, hey, you like graphic novels? Sandman Volume 4 is over there, and it's $12.99. It's annotated." Hardback edition. It's gorgeous. Only one left. And they were just like, oh, okay. And then I just like ran away. Like I'm not good at this. So if I was a Telosian and I'd been hiding out underground, which apparently I have in real life, I would just be like, capture him! He's the perfect specimen!
Let's be friends. Let's lock him up and be friends.
Wouldn't you like to have your fantasy things? Look at the she's green sometimes.
Here's graphic novels. Can I now be? Yeah. Yeah, no, fair enough. I am typically of the variety of neurodivergent person that will stand next to a group of friends, overhear them talking, and like wait for a good moment to make a joke in between their conversation, and then I'm suddenly part of the group. That is my trying to connect and invite myself into a conversation. It's never just, hi, by the way, you seem great. Can we talk about X subject, why we're both here, you know? That would be way too forward. Can't do that.
And besides that, the person was also a woman, so I was like, I don't want to be like nerd girl, you know, because I'm like, but I also don't want to like walk up and be like, oh, I'm married, and that's your introduction. So it's just like, it's better to just not be friends. And
it's hard to be like, oh, you seem nice, but also I'm not hitting on you. I'm it's perfectly fine. I just want to what do I even want? You seem nice. This is all I have. What the fuck do we do now? Yeah.
You seem nice. You have a ton of graphic novels.
There's already
we could be
common
friends.
interest there to talk about. Yeah, it's plenty of subjects, topics for conversation. Yeah.
Yeah. So anyway, that's all I meant by that. I recognize
I was like, let's
something.
Be clear.
I recognize
we don't
something.
capture people. Yeah, I get that.
I recognize something within myself and the Telosians. Where it's just like, I don't know how this works.
Yeah. I mean, as long as you don't recognize the very specific butt cheek brains they have, you're probably good to go.
I do. They're just on my butt.
I mean, that's valid. That's probably where they should be.
Yeah. Like, you know, shit starts like throbbing and pulsating on my ass, and I know it's just my sciatica acting up. I'm just like, damn sciatica, you know?
Oh, gosh.
Yeah, I was floored when I saw this as a kid. Well, I saw it probably as a kid when it first aired in the 80s, because this actual episode, as far as being the pilot episode airing in its entirety, did not air until the 80s.
Right.
Most of it did air on the original series as a 2-part episode called The Menagerie. Mm-hmm. But
we'll get there.
We will get there. But when I saw this as a teenager, because I wound up getting like the VHS at a video store or something, I was 12, 13, floored by the Telosian saying of the cute young yeoman Colt, she has unusually high female drives.
Yeah. God.
Unusually strong female drives is what he said.
Yeah. I wrote that one down too in my fountain pen notes here. It's like, that one is just funny.
It was, and it followed up him talking about number 1. Although she seems to lack emotion, this is largely a pretense. She often has fantasies involving you. Like, dude, don't rat her out, invasive, man.
Yeah, you're just outing them like they're private shit. And on the other side, like he gets to live his fantasies, but apparently, they don't get to hear like, oh no, he has some weird shit about green ladies dancing.
Yeah. He likes horses. He's really big into horses. He thinks about hell a lot, and
a fable from childhood. That was fun.
What I really like about that is, it was a little. They didn't really go into it, but like later in Star Trek, in Discovery, which is one of the newer shows. I don't know if you know, they've recast the character of Chris Pike with Anson Mount from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. He was Black Bolt.
Oh, right, that guy. Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So he plays Chris Pike, and they actually do play with his faith and his childhood faith, and his feelings
Okay.
with Christianity and stuff, and how that plays into
interesting.
what.
Yeah.
I love that they like took that little bit from the
Took that-
cage.
Yeah, the tiny grain there. That's like, oh, he's still he was Christian at one point. So like, okay, this is still influence. That's very clever. That's good to like go back and keep that in canon and make a story out of it.
Yeah, and he does a fantastic job as Pike. He's the captain on Strange New Worlds. So
Right. Okay.
And the character that played number 1 was Majel Barrett. That's who wound up marrying Gene Roddenberry. He used to like make jokes about like, oh, the network said I, had to either get rid of the satanic looking Spock or I had to get rid of the woman. So I kept the alien and married the girl because they wouldn't let me do the other thing legally. Ha ha.
Yeah, he's not wrong.
But yeah. So number 1 is on Strange New Worlds. She's played by Rebecca Romaine.
Oh, sure.
But you won't see like Majel Barrett will be in the original series as Nurse Chapel. They put on a blonde wig.
Oh, okay.
She's kind of a pretty different character. She doesn't look the same unless you really know.
Yeah, no, exactly. I probably wouldn't have noticed. Now I need to pay attention.
Yeah. And it's funny because on Strange New Worlds, like Chapel is a character on Strange New Worlds, but they're 2 different actresses. And I'm just sitting there going like, you're both supposed to be Majel.
Yeah.
But they're both
lovely.
really good. They're both really good on the new show. What else? Is there anything else you have?
No, I don't think so. I have some. There's of course that there's just tiny touches of adding to his being capable. The fact that he immediately notices like, oh, you're wearing the same fabric. You're with them,
Yeah.
And she's just the whole playing coy where he's very perceptive and like poking through a lot of the lies that are being spun in front of him. So it was almost a shame having watched this and then being like, yeah, I'm not going to spend a lot of time with him ever again. But well, apparently in a
but
couple
you will.
of shows. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Eventually, everything comes back around. So no, it's I think I've said most of the things I was thinking of. It has a nice nostalgia, even for someone who has never seen much of it at all. There's no point where I'm like, oh, this is old stuff. I'm just very happy to look at old time blaster effects and if the most I'll say about it is like, oh yeah, sometimes the fight scenes take a bit long and it's clearly shouldn't be the focus because there's more interesting things happen when they speak. But it's just generally fun. It got me excited enough to do a podcast, so I'm apparently in.
Yeah, that kind of surprised me that you were in enough to want to do a podcast.
That's fair.
I was also like, is it just because it's me?
Man.
Is it just because you want to hang? You want to talk to me? Because we could just talk. You don't have to.
I know.
Watch a show you don't want to watch.
Oh, it's not that bad. No. But you were definitely like triple checking with me to be like, are you sure are you interested enough? But no, I'm enjoying this, and I'm curious to see what is kept and what changed, basically to accommodate the network, I guess, because this feels to be like a good kickoff, but also they couldn't keep everything clearly.
Yeah.
So I'm looking forward to what they could fit in and what was sort of kicked out.
Yeah. Now the guy Robert Butler, the guy that directed it, thought it was too cerebral, and then the whole time they were shooting, and then he kind of, and the more I read about it, the more he was just like, I kept trying to tell Gene, and he was just too close to it, and he just didn't care. He's like, he was not in a space where he could hear anything that I was saying. Okay. NBC rejected the episode. They declared it was too cerebral, and Robert Butler was like,
"Can't have intelligent television." Ugh.
The network was feeling exactly like I did, and then Roddenberry said. He said, I sort of understood. I wrote and produced what I thought was a highly imaginative idea, and I realized I had gone too far. I should actually have ended it with a fist fight between the hero and the villain. if I wanted it on television, because that's the way shows were being made at the time. The great mass audience would say, well, if you don't have a fist fight when it's ended, how do we know that's the finish?
My goodness. I mean, it's spot on. It's just kind of sad.
Yeah.
Because it's good. It's fun. I don't see the issue.
NBC also cited criticisms like the presence of the female first officer on the bridge and the character of Spock being too alien or satanic for audiences at the time. However, the myth of the network wanting to eliminate the female first officer was debunked by Herb Solow and Robert Justman in Inside Star Trek: The Real Story. In the book, they state that NBC supported the idea of a strong woman in a leading role. They only rejected Majel Barrett, feeling the actress is not talented enough to pull off such a role and carry a show as a co-star. NBC was also not satisfied with the majority of the actors. They wrote, "We also think you can do better with the ship's doctor, the yeoman, and other members of the crew." Solo decided to hire a full-time casting director for the next pilot and eventually the series. So that's the thing I just found out just doing prep for this episode, because I had always heard what Roddenberry said, and I guess I should go back and reread, because I know I've read Inside Star Trek: The Real Story. I just don't remember it. I don't remember
Fair
it.
enough.
You watch so many interviews, read so many books. You just kind of have like a congealed idea of what is true. So
you also got to keep space for the stories themselves. Yeah. That's interesting, because it makes some amount of sense where I'm like, yeah, she's not that fleshed out of a character yet. I mean, she's not given much to do, so I'm not like, oh, she's a bad actor, but it's just she's not doing a whole lot. And I don't know, the yeoman was nice. I liked her, but also didn't have a huge ton of shit to do. So who knows where that would have gone? But guess I just made clear my pick. But that's. I
mean, I thought she did fine. I especially liked she showed a moderate amount of restraint, but still embarrassed when the Talosians were outing her. And then when the yeoman on the bridge was saying, "Who would you have picked as Eve?" and she was like, "Yeoman." Yeah. Like that was a really good first officer move. Like, shut your mouth and get back to your work. Don't ask him that. What the hell's wrong with you? Like, yeah. I thought she did a really good job, but
it's fun because it's layered enough where you could also take it as I don't want to hear that answer either. Like I don't want to know. there's it's an embarrassing question to ask, but it's also like it's what everyone's secretly wondering. So you gotta poke at it.
Yeah, well, maybe not poke at it.
Fair.
So DeForest Kelley, the guy who went on to play Dr. McCoy, watched the episode around the same time it was being shown to studio executives, and he told Gene Roddenberry, "Well, I don't know what the hell it's all about, but it's either going to be the biggest hit or the biggest miss God ever made."
Yeah, I mean, it's not far off. Makes sense. I'm glad it went on to become a thing. Like, Jesus. I always find it hilarious when actors within the era are like, I don't get all this nerd stuff, but I'm in it, and I guess I'm just gonna have to deal with it now. It's very it happens to every franchise where it's just like I needed money, I got a gig, now I'm part of this bullshit universe that everyone really cares about. I don't, It's like, it's always funny.
One of the great little bits in this episode that is just can't in any way be canon, is when the guy Tyler says, because they meet the people who apparently crashed on Talos 18 years ago.
Like, the time barrier has been broken.
The time barrier's been broken. Our new ships can, get you back quicker than you ever. And I
wrote that down because it's fun in terms of world building, but I'm also like, how did they get there? Like, slower, but it's
there's just no way that's canon at all. Like, at the time, Roddenberry didn't want to say what century this was set in. And that was
Fair.
true of the entire original series. So you'll have like, references back to the past, and like the crew members will say something like, well, that was 500 years ago, or that was 200 years ago. And it just never lines up with anything. It never makes any sense. And
Yeah.
by Star Trek II, they went ahead and said, this is the 23rd century. And from later things, we extrapolated an actual timeline. So we can basically put TOS at around 2266 instead of 1966.
Sure.
But when you look at things like Discovery, Strange New Worlds, Enterprise, all like Warp Drive has been around for like 200 years. So
yeah,
just ignore
impossible.
Just ignore what Tyler says.
he doesn't know history. Yeah.
Well, you can either do that, or you can do what I do, and say like they have actually done time travel so much on Star Trek that there are just multiple alternate realities, and the cage is just before any of those other time travel things happened. So at that point in the timeline, it was sometime in the last 18 years they figured out how to do warp drive.
Sure, yeah, you can make that make sense. I'll eventually get around to understanding these mechanics once there's you know time travel involved.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once you just introduce time travel, they change the past.
On the table.
Everything's on the table.
Sure,
everything's on the table. Yeah. They're like, we're from a stellar group across the galaxy. Why don't you say Starfleet? Because they didn't know what Starfleet was yet. They didn't have that term. But now, other Star Trek fans hate me because I'm the one like, we can have multiple universes, you see, branches from the time travel.
I need the whiteboard. I need the Back to the Future explanation. Yeah,
and they're just like, no, they just didn't have it yet because it was a pilot. And I'm like, that's
true, but don't break reality. That's a fourth wall. That's there for a reason.
Just like
find an explanation because it's all canon and it has to match and fit, and it doesn't.
It won't. But just like
of course not.
A lot of Trekkies get mad with me because I desperately I have ideas for it. Like the line that Pike says, "I just can't get used to a woman on the bridge." Well, we know that well before the cage there were women on the bridge, women captaining their own ships and whatnot. But I want, back in Enterprise, it happened 150 years before this. But I want the story. I want to see it. I want to see how it could be a slippery slope. Like maybe they're in the middle of the Romulan War and they use some weapon that's for some reason accidentally only works on women. So they're like, let's take all the women officers off the bridge. And then you get some old-headed, more conservative-leaning people. Like it's a slippery slope. The Federation could get overrun by like more conservative, let's not bring women into this bullshit, and use that as a fear tactic to get women out of Starfleet in leadership positions.
That's interesting. You can headcanon anything a number of ways, but it's fun to think about, and that's how people come up with taking these little grains and details from something really old and making a new show. That's what you do. You come up with new explanations for old stuff. And incorporating things together, and yeah, sure, it's still going to be messy canon, but it's part of the fun. It's part of being a fan.
Yeah. Speaking of messy canon, Spock's cry of "Switch to rockets, we're blasting out" is totally ridiculous. We never hear about rocket engines on the Enterprise ever again.
Sure, that's good to know.
There are no rockets on the Enterprise. There are impulse engines. There's a warp drive. There are no rockets.
There's more fun names than rockets. Yeah, they just had to come up with them. Good to know.
Yeah, and I love that they pretty much on the original series they always have what looks like a really thick iPad. I loved on this one they just have a metal clipboard with some paper on it.
Yeah, straight up, sure.
Yeah, it's just
it still works.
Yeah,
just write some shit down.
They're
I'm doing
literally printing things off of their computer. It says here the message.
Why not? I still got a printer. The things run out of ink almost instantly, but they're still around. They will be for a while.
They're around.
Sometimes you gotta hold something.
I guess.
And sometimes that something is a clipboard. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I think I'm out. I'm out of things to talk about with the cage.
Yeah, sure, perfect. Me too. I'm just looking forward to the next one.
Okay. Well, cool. Guys, the thing is the same. It's Star Trek Universe or, STUcast on Twitter, stucast@gmail.com. If you want to write in, we'll totally answer feedback on these episodes. Once they start coming out, send us your feedback for the old original series reviews, and Effie and I will respond to those. I only ask that once the new shows start showing up, keep the feedback separate so it's easier to not.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't want to be spoiled. Like keep that out of the feedback.
Effie doesn't want to be spoiled, so she's not showing up on new episodes. Yeah.
If your trivia is like, oh, you never told her, like, oh, this comes back in that episode, I don't want to know that until I get there.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it minimal. Like, I told her the fate thing, but I just think that's like a nice little enticing thing. Like, hey, some point we get more about that. But I just talked myself out of that.
And I'll probably have forgotten by then, so I'll live.
It'll be great. That'd be great. Like when I was watching that Discovery episode, I was like, oh, because he was the hell thing in the cage. Because I've seen the cage like 100 times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, but by the time we ever end up in Discovery, it's going to be a while.
But my wife was like, what? Hell thing.
Oh.
Yeah. So
hell. It's like one shot. But I love that they did that. It's just very much... They set the set on fire for a bit just to have that shot, which is very evocative and like more visual than just showing him screaming in pain like they did her. So it's fun.
Yeah,
I appreciate just the effort put in there.
Yeah, I did like when she disappeared. Like her clothing stayed there. And he just like batted it like a cat. He was like, he's just like bat.
That's a weird choice when they could just make her disappear entirely. But sure.
It's like just for a second he needs to bat the clothing. Like, the hell, is she still in there?
Am I groping her now? Is this? It feels like just fabric to me, but oh God.
All right. Yeah. So we'll see you folks next time. Joe on True, live long and prosper. And all the things that we're supposed to say at the end of the show.
I'll find out what those are eventually.
It's just that. Joe Long True, live long and prosper.
Good to know. I'm learning.
All right, guys. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Star Trek Universe Podcast, a Stranded Panda production. If you'd like to hear more from David C. Roberson, check out the DC On Screen podcast or maladjusted.tv for his web videos. If you'd like to hear more from Matthew Carroll, check out the Marvel Cinematic Universe podcast or listen to his music. Just search for Matthew Carroll anywhere you get music.